I'm going to have Steve Strano. He's going to be speaking today in reference to how to pay for all this, all with the federal and state. So you want to get real friendly with Steve. But anyway, he's with the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation, and he's been with them for 13 years. He has a BS degree out of with the environmental studies and also MS in ecological engineering. Anyway, thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. All right, so as he said, I'm with Natural Resource Conservation Service, which is part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Having here heard of the Farm Bill. So a lot of funding goes through the Farm Bill for doing wildlife type projects, thanks to probably people like you. So I'm here to tell you about some of those opportunities that we have. All right, everybody, a lot of people have probably heard of the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, or as we call it, CREP, in Maryland. I have flyers over here for CREP and also for another program I'm going to talk about, WRP. So CREP is a program where we pay landowners a certain amount based on their soil rental rate to take environmentally sensitive land out of production and put it into some kind of conserving use. The contracts are 10 to 15 years long, and they can pay annual rental payments of between $110 to $270 per acre, depending on your soil types and what type of practice you sign up for. So there's a bunch of different practices. I'm going to go over that. In addition to annual rental payments, they also pay you some signing bonuses, and then there's cost share for doing it. Typically, with all the bonuses that they give you, you'll get more than enough money you need to implement. So with the annual rental payments, that's in your pocket, and then between the signing bonuses and the cost share, you'll even get a little extra in your pocket usually. It has program objectives for both. It came, when it started, it was more of a set-aside program. That's just more of a price support program. And then eventually it became, well, why not pay people to do not just setting it aside, but actually put it into something that's beneficial. So something beneficial for water quality and also for wildlife habitat. All right, so HEL practices, highly erodible land, is a Food Security Act term for land that is fairly steep and sloped and erodes relatively easily. If you do have land that is like that, you can put whole fields into some kind of cover. And cover, we're usually talking about, well, native grasses, pines, hardwoods, or even a mix of grasses, shrubs, and trees. On the shore, there's not a lot of highly erodible land that qualifies. It's usually when you get to the other side of the bay that you get a lot more of that land. Repairing forest buffers, Nevin was just talking about forest land management and how it could be good for early successional habitat. The buffers are buffers along streams and water bodies. That actually pays the highest rate. When I was talking about annual rental payments, that gives you the highest payment. The buffers can be up to 250 feet in width off a stream or other eligible water body. And you can plant them in hardwoods. The one nice thing about the buffer, the forest buffer, is your last 35 feet can actually be a herbaceous buffer. So even though it's forested buffer, it gives you that grassland type habitat along the edge, which is often what you want along the edge of your fields. So you got that soft edge as part of the practice. If you don't want to do forested buffers, a lot of people don't like the idea of putting their land back to trees after their great grandfather or whoever cleared it all. So a lot of people feel better off going with herbaceous buffers. Herbaceous, grasses and forbs and legumes, stuff that provide a lot of the habitat and food sources for your game birds. Up to 100 feet wide, adjacent to streams and other eligible water bodies. If you have field ditches, we can only do 35 feet on those field ditches. On each side of the ditch, yes. And then we also have some other practices. And these numbers here, we're used to all these acronyms and abbreviations, so we have so many things to think about. We got to use them, but they're all explained in that handout. It'll tell you which practices are which there. But we got a number of practices where you can actually do a combination of things, which is often what you want for the early successional habitat. You want some like shrubby areas, you want some grassy areas, you may want some wooded areas too. And with these buffers, it's the same type of eligibility, adjacent to streams and water bodies, not on ditches though. It's not eligible on ditches. And if you go out beyond 100 feet, we actually have something built into the program specifically for shrub habitat, which includes planting using some woody species and also native forbs and wildflowers out there, which often provide a lot of either indirectly or directly to food sources for your grassland birds. All right, I got a picture in this one.
You're speaking about the woody buffers. Would you be able to harvest those periodically, or what would you doing in those woody areas?
The woody buffers, you mean as in like production harvest or management?
Management, both. I guess both.
You can do some management on them. The contract length is for 10 to 15 years. So after that contract runs out, you can do what you want with it at that point. You're probably not going to have much to harvest anyway at that point.
But if you're for management, that 15 years for the
there are management things. I'm going to go over a couple of the management activities that we have available. We do have another type of practice in CREP called Habitat for Declining Species, which is mainly geared towards more of your rare, threatened, and endangered species. But one of the practices we have is for grassland bird habitat. And when I say grassland bird habitat, for this one I'm talking true grassland bird habitat. So these are the birds that really have no tolerance for shrubs or trees at all. And they usually need big blocks of at least 25 acres in size. If you want to manage a lot of this early successional habitat, this might not be what you would want to do, but it is an option out there. And then wetland restoration in shallow water areas, which if you like waterfowl, you might want to do them. But one thing that maybe some people don't think about is when you enroll your land in these practices, you can also enroll up to the same amount of acreage that you're going to restore to wetland or shallow water area into upland buffer. And that upland buffer can be managed for early successional habitat. And there you've got both habitat types right next to each other, so you're probably going to have a lot of diverse wildlife use in that area. All right, then the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program is it's a federal-state partnership that's specific to Maryland. Continuous CRP is a federal program that's nationwide, and there's a lot of practices in there, but the one practice I thought you really might be interested in is this habitat buffers for upland birds. This essentially was put into CRP a number of years ago because of game birds, grassland birds, because people wanted that option to be able to enroll, put field borders in their cropland, and get the annual rental payments that you get through Conservation Reserve Program. Typically, before they put this in there, you had to have some kind of stream or a water body to buffer. In this case, this practice actually just lets you go ahead and put a field border around the edge of the field up to 120 feet wide, and you don't need any kind of water body or stream to be able to buffer with it. It doesn't pay as well as the CREP practices, but if you don't have a water body, then it's a good option to do. And another thing we allow with this one that's different than all the other ones is you can actually just let the buffer naturally regenerate. So I don't know, I wasn't here for Bob's talk, but I suspect he probably talked about how sometimes natural regeneration, it might be the best way to get good quail habitat. And this particular practice allows you to do that. In fact, Bob helped a lot with the technical requirements for this practice. So. All right, so management activities. In CREP and CRP, we have some required management activities. When it's in, essentially, when you signed up to put it in early successional habitat, then we want you to maintain it in early successional habitat. And the stuff we, can have you do is you can do disking, prescribed burns, and also overseeding of legumes, and even some overseeding of native wildflowers and forbs. Unfortunately, they didn't put a lot of money in the program for this. At most, you can get up to $125 per acre for the life of the contract for this, and up to $50 in 1 year per acre. But it does give you something as far as money, and you are getting annual rental payments, which can be pretty high. So it gives you some money to go out there and do disking if you need to, and the burning. It's the biggest problem we have with this is finding people who actually have the time and equipment to be able to do it. Because as you probably have been told, if you want to maintain early successional habitat, by nature it doesn't want to stay that way. So you actually actively have to manage that habitat. But there is some money in the program for doing that kind of stuff.